Hi, and welcome to This is Ibrox. My name is Tommy McIntyre, and I am joined for this quick chat on Rangers' new signing, Joe Crann. So, Joe is a journalist with the Star newspaper in the UK and also has a very deep affection and knowledge of the South African football landscape, having been out there for about a decade. Uh, Back to Britain shores, Joe, how are you getting on?
Yeah, doing all right. Getting used to the cold again. I was meant to miss this. I was meant to be in April, so I was meant to be like arriving in summer in the UK and having that nice, British summertime. But then COVID decided, no, you can come winter instead.
Well, welcome back to Britain. Get used to disappointment. Is essentially essentially the piece. So I suppose before we start to get into talk about talking about Rangers' latest signing, which seems really interesting. Just a quick question for you, actually. What led to going out to South Africa in the first place?
um, Circumstance really. So the
You're not
the
going to say
short
you were on the
story
run
is,
or something like that, Joe. Were you? That's a
yeah,
different type of
I need to get
podcast.
out. No, so the short story is basically I went on holiday there in 2006 with my mum and dad. I really liked it there. They said, yeah, of course you are. And I did. I went back for the World Cup in 2010. And I did like an internship at a company called Sokladuma. After my month-long internship, they offered me a job. So I thought, yeah, why not? I'll go spend a year in Cape Town and see what happens. Then 9 years later, I was still there. I did a move from Cape Town to Joburg halfway through it. But that was, football reasons because all the big teams, Kaizer Chiefs, Orlando Pirates, Mamelodi Sundowns, all the big teams are in Gauteng up that way. So I made that move, and then I was meant to be moving back in April, but that got a little bit delayed. So I've been back about 3 weeks now, but I got a lot of love for that country. Incredible people. It's a second home that I think I will probably go back to for the rest of my life. At least once a year.
Well, there we go. We've got you and Dave King out in South Africa doing our work for Rangers. So, well, I suppose then, you've referenced Mamelodi Sundowns and stuff like that as well there, which obviously Bongani Zungu played for. I'm just wondering when he first came to your prominence or the kind of footballing community's prominence out there in South Africa.
So Bongs kind of made his name. He's got a really interesting story actually. So Bongs started off. He sort of made his name at a team called University of Pretoria. They call them Tuks. It's a big sporting university out in Pretoria, and Bongs was being used as a striker or a winger. That was his position. That was where he was being used, and he had sort of a breakout season in the top flight. I think he scored 7 goals in his first season, and like I say, he was kind of playing both of those positions. And there was a little bit of a battle on for his signature. A team called SuperSport United wanted him, and also Mamelodi Sundowns, who are an absolute powerhouse. Like they're probably one of the richest teams in the continent. They had up until about a week ago one of the best coaches in Africa, in a guy called Pitso Masimane. Pitso was he's just gone to join Al Ahly in Egypt. But yeah, they had Pitso in charge, and he really, really wanted to bring Bongs in. He managed to do that, and when he got him in, he said, "This boy's not a striker. I feel he can do a job somewhere else." And what Pitso and his technical team did was they converted him to a centre mid. And one thing that Bongani's got, which you don't find in too many South African players, is a bit of natural physique. You find if you look historically at South African footballers, they're quite slight, they're very skillful, tricky, sort of really intelligent little footballers. You don't find too many big lads. So Bongs has that. He's got a bit of stature about him, and that's something that I think Pitso saw in him and thought he can be better utilised doing something else. So they shifted him into defensive midfield, and I think because of his upbringing in the different position he played growing up, he's got a lot of strings to his bow. Do you know what I mean? Like he's not a player that can just play defensive mid and can only tackle, and that's all he does. Because he's, I think they probably call him a deep line playmaker, because he's got that ability to pick a pass, and his passing range is really, really good. But he has got that physique, and he's not afraid to get stuck in.
Just a quick question, then, Joe. If he was playing out on the wing and then up front and all that, I suppose the question would be: has he got natural pace?
Yeah, look, he's not slow. Put it that way. He's not like You know, he's not like Kent, who is ridiculous. You know, I hate him. I hate playing him on FIFA. He's the worst player to play on FIFA. But yeah,
you sound like defenders in Scotland there, to be honest with you.
But yeah, like Bongs he's not short of a yard. You know, he's a quick player, but he's not, you know, he's not rapid. Put it that way.
Okay.
He'll probably be annoyed at me for saying that, but yeah, he's I think the best way to describe him in terms of that is he's athletic. You know, he's not to blow him up too much, but he's got that little bit of you know, that sort of air and grace that Patrick Vieira used to have, where he just kind of, you know, he kind of glides around a little bit. He's got because he's quite leggy, he's tall. He's got that little bit about him.
Well, that's probably
yeah,
a point there, Joe. If we just, you know, and we will touch on these other clubs, but it's probably a good staging point. One of the concerns when anybody comes into the Scottish game, particularly for Rangers, is that it's pretty rough and tumble sometimes. And if I, you know, from the outside, if I look at Bongani's career, you've got Victoria Guimarães, you've got Amiens, and I suppose I'm looking at those last two leagues and I'm thinking, well, not known for maybe rough and tumble, maybe more on the technical side. And I suppose the question I'm trying to get to is, has he got the heart for the fight?
Yeah, he's definitely got the bottle for it. That's for sure. I am 100% sure that when Steven Gerrard and his team were talking to him, they'll have said, "This is like nothing else you've seen before." And it's one of the things that I was saying because obviously I grew up in the UK, so I've watched a fair bit of Scottish football over my years, and yeah, when people talk about tough physical leagues and they talk about the Premier League being rough, you know, I've said to a lot of South Africans that, you know, he needs to be up for a scrap here, because it's like nothing else you've seen before for a lot of South Africans. There's actually a few of the games are going to be shown on South African TV now, which is great. But yeah, I'm sure he's been made fully aware of how physical it's going to be. And look, if he sort of has any troubles in adjustment and stuff, which, you know, it can always happen. It could happen to anybody. It won't be through a lack of trying or through a lack of bottle. I can tell you that.
Yeah, well, that's always good to hear if he brings that side, the physicality and the technical aspects, because we're a very technical football playing team at down Ibrox way. So I'm just wondering, it comes towards the end of the kind of Mamelodi Sundowns career, so to speak. I think he's there 13 to the 15-16 season. Were there other offers on the table out with Victoria Guimarães, or was that the club that was leading the pack right from the start?
So with Bongsy, he's one thing I will say about him is he always seems to land on his feet, and that is, you know, I won't say it's luck, because I hate people saying things are lucky, because it never really is. It's, you know, you put yourself in whatever position you get in, but he seems to make very good decisions in the moves that he makes. You know, when he joined Sundowns, for instance, everybody said it was the wrong move for him. You know, he wasn't going to play, he wasn't going to do this or that, and he went to Sundowns and he became pivotal. You know, he became a really big part of that team. He went to Guimarães. He had a tough 6 months while he sort of acclimatized to Portuguese or European football. And, you know, there's people in South Africa saying he'd failed and he needed to come home, you know, go back to South Africa. And he was like, "Nah, that's not what I'm about." And he knuckled down and he made a real name for himself in Guimarães. And then I think he moved for 2.5 to Amiens. Amiens been tough because there's been a lot of back and forth with him there, in terms of, you know, there's been a lot of interest in him for a while, and it seemed like, you know, there's been talk of him moving for so long, and he's been in and out of the side because of that. So his time at Amiens probably hasn't gone quite as he wanted to, I don't think. But you know, from what I can gather, he leaves with a good reputation. I went to see him play a couple of times. At one point, there was quite a lot of South African boys playing in France. A guy called Keegan Dolly at Montpellier, and Lebo Piri, who plays for Guingamp. And I went to see him all at like a little bit of a French tour. And I went to see Bongs. And one thing that really sticks out for me about him is he's a good soul, if you know what I mean. Like he's got a really good heart. I went to meet him in Amiens, and he was like sort of driving me around and that if I needed to go anywhere. He was asking if I needed a lift places and that kind of thing. And yeah, I got a lot of time for that. And also just on that note, one of my first interactions with Bongani, I did an interview with him a little while before he went to Portugal. And I think one thing that says a lot about him is with his first, major payday, he built his mum a house. They grew up in a place called Deduza, and with his, with his first big paycheck, he bought his mum a house. And yeah, I think that says quite a lot about the sort of person that he is. And I'm just really happy that he's taken this next step because, he wants to play at the highest possible level for him. And, stepping up to Rangers is not only a huge club, but it's also the chance to sort of play in, Europa League. And, that's the next step. That's where he wants to be. And yeah, I think with him, it's always been a case of there has always been interest. As long as I've known Bongani, there has been, clubs watching him. I mean, I'm a Sheffield Wednesday fan. And at one point, Wednesday were watching him, Carlos Carvalhal, who is now at Braga. He was a Wednesday manager for a bit. And in and there was a little bit of interest from Wednesday's side, but I think he was a little bit out of our price range at the time. But yeah, he's always been a man in demand. Basically, as long as I've known him as a footballer since he was coming through at Tux, he's always been a player who's not been short of options.
I mean, certainly that's great to hear as well about his first big payday and building a house for his mum and the way maybe comports himself off the field in terms of treating you and stuff like that. I think that might be the first time I've ever heard of a player driving a journalist roundabout. That's incredible. So I suppose then if I move into a slightly more kind of challenging piece, he's 27. He's in the national team. I think it's 29 caps or something like that already. He's cycled through Sundowns, Guimarães, Amiens. I think out with of maybe Sundowns, I don't think you would say Guimarães or Amiens are the top clubs in their respective countries. And the reason I mention that is because the level of expectation and pressure when you then come to a club like Rangers. There's also, I think, 17 to this season in terms of being Amiens, that's 52 appearances somewhere in there, which isn't massive, but you've mentioned that in terms of maybe there was a lot of things behind the scenes in terms of maybe the club wanting to land on things. I'm also interested as well, so I'll touch on that in a second, but I was interested as well that it seemed extremely protracted for Rangers to get him over, and I was wondering if there was other clubs that were fishing in the background to see if they could get anything. His agents just wanted to land out, which is totally legitimate. But I'm just wondering, is he also, so the second part of that question is he also really prepared for the step up? And then I suppose, what are Rangers getting? Because I sense this is his big move. This is his chance.
Yeah, I think it's tough to say in terms of is he ready, because I think with some of those situations, you only really know when it happens. You can do as much sort of mental preparation as you like. But we've seen over the years, and not just at Rangers, all the big clubs, some people end up sort of deer in the headlights, and, that's just what happens. But one thing that I can say is Bongani put in a really, really good performance against Egypt in the AFCON. And I've been to games in Egypt, and that is fiery. Like this was in a packed out stadium in the AFCON against the host. Egypt were hosting the AFCON. There was a lot of expectation. They had Mo Salah in the side, all that kind of thing. And he was brilliant. He was really, really good that day. So in terms of like big crowds and hostility and stuff like that, that's nothing new. That's not going to be a sort of a daunting experience for him. As for the other stuff that comes with, social media, that comes with, being a new person in a new city when there is the expectation like there is at Rangers. Like I say, I just don't think you ever really know until you do it. But he's a strong person. He's got the mentality for it. And look, if there was ever a mentor to have in your corner for something like that, I mean, Steven Gerrard's probably up there.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I know he'll be looked after really well by the club and the support team that they've got behind the scenes for new players coming in as well. So just shifting focus a little bit more, like I said, the the contractual side of things seemed a little bit elongated and protracted as well. And there seems to be a couple of bits and bobs kicking about in terms of, and I'm just looking for maybe clarity you can provide, that he signed another extension to his deal before he came across from Amiens to allow them to, there's an option to buy, which Rangers have obviously pre-agreed. It sounds to me that that's something that all parties have probably agreed to make sure that Amiens are protected and get some sort of feedback.
I think it's kind of just a safeguarding, really. It just makes sure that nobody. To be honest, the way it's been done in the end does kind of feel like it suits all parties. There's no, Rangers don't have to fork out a big chunk of money for a player at the minute, which they potentially don't have, given the situation we find ourselves in. But Bongani gets his move. Amiens are safeguarding that they're not going to lose him for free, and basically Rangers get a bit of a try before you buy. That's basically the situation they find themselves in. It's interesting the way that this deal was reported, and I think it's a perfect example of how transfers are never black and white. There was a lot of report that he'd failed the medical, that he was overweight, the plug had pulled on the deal completely, and that was never the case. That I was never told at any point. I mean, as I'm sure I followed this deal quite closely from start to finish, and I was never told at any stage that the deal was off. I was told there were stumbling blocks. I was told there were things that were being finalised and sorted out, but not once did I get a message from any of the guys I talked to saying, this deal is dead. And like I say, I think it shows the nature of it, because when it went quiet for best part of a month, maybe more even, where there was just nothing. And like I say, it just shows that things, there's always things going off in the scene, even if it's behind the scenes, even if it's not necessarily been reported on. But yeah, there was interest elsewhere. I know there was a lot of interest in Italy. There was interest in Spain. Olympiacos in Greece, they were after him as well at one point. So yeah, I think he probably would have left Amiens regardless. I think in some way, shape or form, he was going to move this window. And from a very selfish perspective, I'm glad it was Rangers, because now it means I get to go watch him play.
Yeah, you and me both. You and me both, buddy. And I'd imagine, if when you're next speaking to him, he should probably get absolutely used to the media in Scotland and some other obsessed parties on social media picking over everything to do with him. He'll be branded overweight from day one. He'll be a disruption in the dressing room. All of that good canvas will get repainted time and time again. So I suppose my final question then, because this is just a very brief chat, Joe, although I suspect that we'll be looking to get you back on to This Is Ibrox, maybe on the main podcast in the future, so hopefully you'll be able to do that for us, would be, if I'm looking about the squad at Ibrox, and I'm looking at a deep-lying playmaker, to use your phraseology, and it sounds like Bongani sits into that mould. I'm looking at Stephen Davis, and I'm thinking maybe him, potentially a Ryan Jack, are the ones who might be just, repolishing their boots at the moment and taking a few extra sessions on the treadmill. Is that probably fair? I'm thinking more Stephen Davis than Ryan Jack.
Possibly, yeah. I think, to be honest, the thing with Bongani is that because of it, like I mentioned earlier, because of the way that he's grown up, he can basically play anywhere through the middle. He's played as a 6, an 8, and a 10 at different points in his career, and that's not taken into account his wing play as a youngster and his role up front. So I think it might be something where, obviously, Gerard's brought him in as a midfielder. He's said as much, but it might be a case of waiting to see what happens in a few training sessions, and maybe they look at the way he plays and his physique and his range of passing, and they want to push him a little bit further up top. I think it could be a situation where they really just want to have a look at him first and see sort of where he fits into the Rangers picture.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you say, I think the expectation is he's going to be in the middle of the park, or slightly behind and in front of the defensive unit. But it'll be interesting to see, and you never know. His first game might very well be that Old Firm game that's coming over the hill.
Yeah, talk about a baptism of fire. I mean,
what a
It doesn't
debut.
get much bigger than that, really, does it?
Right, what a debut. But like you say, he'll use that experience from Egypt, playing for the South African national side and stuff like that, and his clubs that he's been through to get him through there. Joe, I suppose that leads me to once again thank you. And for people who are interested, want to be able to follow you from a UK perspective and from your previous work in South Africa, on Twitter, where can they get you? What's your handle?
You can find me at Yes We Crann. It's the same on all my platforms: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. YesWeCrann. Yeah, mainly Sheffield Wednesday news nowadays, because that's my bread and butter. But still a lot of South African content, and I obviously just a general football fan as well. So yeah, if you wanna come join me on there, and hopefully I'll get a few bits and bats on Bongani for you Rangers lot, because I've picked up a lot of Rangers fans, and now I feel like I've got I've got a responsibility to bring you some Bongani Zungu content.
You're the de facto reporter on that now, and we look forward to getting you back onto This Is Ibrox to have a bit more of a look at some of that once he started to play as well. Again, Joe, thank you so much for joining me.
No, it's a pleasure, mate. Thank you very much, and hopefully you can get off to a good start when you finally.
A winner in the Old Firm game would be quite the start.